यमेन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापिनं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुत गुरो गुरो श्रीयुत पदाकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवांश्च। श्रीरूपं सागरजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान् पितां तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचना गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधारा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अधपत्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमः पङ्कजनाभाय नमः पङ्कजमालिने नमः पङ्कजनेत्राय नमस्ते पंकजांग्रहे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। नमो ब्राह्मण्य देवाय गो ब्राह्मण हिताय च जगद्दिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लगते ते गिरिं यत्कृपातम् अहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। ओम अपवित्रो पवित्रो वा सर्वदा स्तां ततो भगिवा यस्मरेत् पुण्डरीकाक्षं स भय अभ्यन्तरं शुचिः। श्री विष्णु। Hare Krishna to all devotees.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, a small thing.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat.
Prabhuji, there is a small static coming in between your sentences. So I don't know, maybe something, some device nearby.
Just 1 minute, Prabhu. So maybe the fan of my laptop must be the problem, Prabhu. Just 1 minute. Yeah. Just hold on. Let me see if I can improve this, Prabhu. Just 1 minute. Prabhu, is it better now?
You can speak maybe for some more time.
Okay, Prabhu. I'll let's try, Prabhu. I've actually just shifted the microphone, and I hope it improves. But if this is not better, let me just try once more. Just let me know if.
It's okay, Prabhuji. Now it's fine.
Now it's fine, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Okay, Prabhu.
Thank you.
All right. So, Sorry, yeah. I'm just trying to share my screen. Hare Krishna to everybody, Dandat Pranam, and welcome to the Sunday class for Srimad Bhagavatam. Yesterday was a long class actually, and so we did spend around 1.5 hours, and we covered around, I would say, around 60% of the chapter. The chapter has around 44 verses. It has 44 verses, and it has 4 sections. And as you we covered first the roles of the Purushavataras from verse 1 to 5. And I did get some feedback from some devotees that, who maybe are listening to this for the first time. I had invited some of my office colleagues also to the session who were very interested. And that seemed to be a little bit on the higher level. That's what I got the feedback. And this is what happens when you are hearing to this for the first time. And from verse 6 to 29, we covered the various incarnations of Krishna. So basically, we covered question 4 of the sages of Naimisharanya. Out of the 6 questions, the 4th question was on the Purushavataras, which is what acts did the Lord perform in relation to creating the material world. I think the key word here is creating the material world. So the Lord created the material world for a purpose. And I also shared that in one of my slides, why he created the material world. So we spoke about the Purushavataras from verse 1 to 5. Then we covered this 5th question. What are the activities of the incarnations of the Lord? So we looked at 22 incarnations that are mentioned here in this chapter. But importantly, in verse number 26, and then 27 and 28, again it is elaborated that this is not it's not an exhaustive list. It is just a inclusive list, but it is not an exhaustive list. Nobody can comprehend the number of incarnations the Lord has. That is beyond human perception or human capability also for us to understand what is possible for the Lord. And there it is very correctly said that in the verse number 28, Eta Chamsha Kala Pumsa, which is all the incarnations we have discussed and all the incarnations we have not discussed, right, are all coming from the Purusha, which is the Lord. And of all these incarnations, of all, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So Krishna himself is Swayam Bhagavan. And that emphasis in that verse is being given because Krishna is the Bhagavan, is the starting point for all these expansions. So today what I will do, since we have a little bit more of time, we have got around another 16 verses to complete the chapter. The last question essentially, where did religion take shelter after the disappearance of Lord Shri Krishna? Which is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll discuss those verses. But before that, I wanted to walk through this chart that I got from Gauranga Darshan Prabhu on the hierarchy of Lord Krishna's expansions. I will try my level best to explain this. So because some of this also is, I would say, is also beyond me. So please forgive me for that. But I will try my best based on what I heard from Gauranga Darshan Prabhu's lecture. And I will request Praveen Prabhu and other senior devotees on the call also to please chip in and please correct me and please also add as needed so that we can make this maximize this session on chapter 3. As I said, this chapter is extremely supremely important chapter because it contains the emperor verse of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Of the 18,000 verses, 355 chapters that we have. This chapter contains the emperor verse. So and I use the analogy of the military commander, right? So the military commander, is followed. So the entire the army that is there, they will follow what the military commander says. Similarly, the entire Bhagavatam is aligned to this particular verse in verse number 28. which is the emperor verse. It's called the Paribhasha Sutra. That's why. So we covered that also yesterday. And now what we will do is we'll quickly go to this chart. We'll take some time to just walk through this. As I said, I'll make my best effort to explain this from what I have listened from the lecture of Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, and then I will proceed to complete the other verses. Is there any questions from yesterday's class, Prabhujis and Matajis, that you want me to address before I go to that? Just to confirm, are you seeing the screen which says it's a PDF document? It is saying hierarchy of Lord Shri Krishna's expansions.
Yes, we can see.
Yes. Okay. So yesterday we discussed a bit. We had this discussion around the first 5 verses wherein we spoke about the Purushavataras. And we also spoke about 22 incarnations. Now, if you go back to the question number 4 of the sages, right? Why has he created this material world? We had this discussion also yesterday. Does anybody remember that, in terms of why Lord creates the material world? Why does he take these incarnations?
Because Jivas wanted to, they want to depart from the spiritual world and enjoy. So that's why Krishna facilitated.
Absolutely correct, Prabhu. The Jiva Tattvas basically, they wanted to enjoy, they wanted to be the proprietors. So Krishna is so ever merciful. He said, okay, I will create a special environment where you can enjoy. But keep in mind, that you will get frustrated and then you will look at me and I will still come and take you back. Now, but there are a few more reasons also that he creates this material world. Actually, this is also to execute certain functions also. So to facilitate this entire Jiva Tattva's desire to lord it over material nature, that is there. But then he also has to administrate so that because he wants these people back, so he comes also to create certain specific functions. So we saw that in the different avatars that we discussed. We had these 22 avatars that we spoke of. And for example, we had the Kumaras, right? They were situated in, their activity was, they were situated in a vow of celibacy, underwent severe austerities for realization of the absolute truth. Devarishi Narada, he comes to basically get people, he imparts devotional service, exposition of the Vedas that deal with devotional service and inspire non-fruitive action. Similarly, you have the Kurma Avatara, whose shell served as a pivot for the Mandarachala hill, used as a churning rod by the theists and the atheists. So each of these incarnations, they had a specific function. And the mission of also all the incarnations is the same, to lead people back to God consciousness, right? Now, and to make this happen, he comes first as the Purushavataras. That's where we started. We started with the Purushavataras. And anybody can just name the 3 Purushavataras.
Karnadakshay Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Shirodakshay Vishnu.
Perfect. So Karnadakshay Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Shirodakshay Vishnu. So Karnadakshay Vishnu is the sum total of all the entire creation. Garbhodakshay Vishnu, the super soul of the universe, and Shirodakshay Vishnu is the super soul lying in everybody's heart. So that is why how he entire guides this whole creation to its end goal, which is to get all the souls back to Godhead. That is the end objective. But before Karnadakshay Vishnu also comes, there are other expansions that are there. So what we will be seeing now on this chart is the hierarchy of expansions. And hopefully you will be able to, from this, be able to see how this leads to the Karnadakshay Vishnu and Shirodakshay Vishnu, and what are the other avatars also that are coming from Shirodakshay Vishnu. So at level number 1, you see the Swayam Rupa of Bhagavan Krishna. Now, this is the original form of Lord Krishna as a Gopa cowherd boy in Vrindavana. Young cowherd boy in Vrindavana. That is the original form, and that is called the Swayam Rupa of Krishna. Now, and if you look at it, this chart has very nicely been prepared. On the left-hand side, you have the different places, where these appearances or expansions are made visible, and also in which planetary system. So this is all happening in Krishna Loka. On the right-hand side, you see this. This is all happening in Krishna Loka. So up to Dwaraka, that is all Krishna Loka. So Swayam Rupa expands as Swayam Prakasha, which is Krishna's personal manifestations. Again, that is subdivided into two, Prabhava Prakasha and Vaibhava Prakasha. Now, Prabhava Prakasha is the forms that are displayed simultaneously, but importantly, they are all equal in their features. And so it's nicely given. An example is given, like Krishna in Rasa Leela, he expands himself as Krishna multiple times for the Rasa Leela performance. Similarly, in 16,108 palaces of Dwaraka, Krishna appears as Krishna himself with all his 16,108 consorts and wives. He's there with each and every one of them. And then in the morning, he comes out. And this is what Gauranga Darshan Prabhu says. He comes out, he again becomes one, and then he goes for his administration to the palace. So that is the potency of Lord Krishna. And here, they are all equal in their features. And then you have Vaibhava Prakasha, wherein these forms are differently manifested according to different emotions. So for example, Sri Balrama is white in color. And his emotions also are different. Vasudeva, son of Devaki, as a Kshatriya. So here, he is expanding in different forms according to different emotions. Now, from the personal manifestation, this is now from Vaibhava Prakasha, the next expansion, which has the forms and emotions differently manifested, that is again divided into two parts, which is the Vilasa and the Swamsha expansions. So first, the Vilasa expansions are described, and there we see the pastimes expansions, the Prabhava Vibhava, which is lesser qualities than Swayam Prakasha. So then one step below that. So here you see, and here is typically these expansions, what we are seeing in Mathura and Dwaraka. And you have the fully potent manifestation. This is the first Adi Chaturvyuha of the expansion that is coming of Vasudeva, Mula Sankrishna, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. So from Vaibhava Prakasha, the first Chaturvyuha, which is called the Adi Chaturvyuha, and is the fully potent manifestations of Vasudeva, Mula Sankrishna, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha come. And some of us who have been reading and been studying this philosophy for some time are familiar with this. From these four fully potent manifestations comes Narayana, and from Narayana comes the Dvitiya Chaturvyuha, the second four expansions of partially potent manifestations, again of Vasudeva, Mahasankrishna, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, right? And from Mahasankrishna, and this is happening now, the place, if you see, this is Vaikuntha. So this is the Vaikuntha Loka, where the Dvitiya Chaturvyuha expansions are happening from Narayana. And from Mahasankarshana come the Swamsha expansions, which are the personal expansions of the Lord. And these manifest lesser potency than the Vilasa expansion. And this is where the Purushavataras come. So from Mahasankarshana come the Purushavataras. So yesterday when we discussed Karunadakshai Vishnu as the ultimate seed from which all the universes are coming. So when he is there, he's inhaling and exhaling from his pores. Trillions, billions, countless universes are emanating from this, right? But before that he's an expansion from Mahasankarshana. So the Lord is expanding in these various forms. Here he's coming down, and here this is where we speak about the Brahma Jyoti. So Karadakshai Vishnu again. So if you look at it from the Swamsha expansions, here you see the avatars that are there. So there are totally we'll see 6 avatars that are there in Swamsha. So one is the Purushavatara, then you have the Gunavataras, you have the Leelavataras, then you have the Manvantara Avataras, you have the Yuga Avataras, and then you have the Satyavesha Avataras that are there. So 6 in total, including the Purushavataras of Karanodakshaya Vishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and Shirodakshaya Vishnu are there. And as you see over here, Karanodakshaya Vishnu is the super soul of all material universes. He expands into all the material universes as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And Garbhodakshaya Vishnu becomes the super soul of that one universe, right? And he expands into the entirety of creation in that one universe as Shirodakshaya Vishnu. And from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, the Gunavataras are coming, which is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva that are there. And they are having a specific function also there. And from Shirodakshaya Vishnu come the other avatars, including the Leela avatars, the Manvantara avatars, and the Yuga avatars, and the Satyavesha avatars. So, for example, if you take a look at the Satyavesha avatara, each of these avatars come exhibiting with a particular Shakti. The Kumaras come with the Jnana Shakti, which is the knowledge of the absolute truth. Narada, he comes with Bhakti Shakti. That is why he's coming with the sole purpose of giving everybody the taste of devotional service so that they can go back to Godhead. And similarly, Buddha and Kalki also come and transcend and expansions. And Brahma comes as Srishti Shakti. That's why Brahma is known as, he's rachofying this entire Srishti, creator of the entire material world and material universe. He's got that Shakti. So this is a little bit in brief of this whole hierarchy of expansions. I will and this is all. And if you're looking at the Swamsha expansions, they are extending up to the Brahmajyoti. And the Vaikuntha and Goloka Vrindavana are above the Brahmajyoti. And the impersonalists, basically, they stop over here because they are not able to comprehend what is beyond that. But for us, there is still an entire journey ahead, and that's what we are aspiring to go, is our ultimate goal, which is to get back here, going back to Godhead, to Goloka Vrindavana. I'll take a pause here. Praveen Prabhu, please, add to this whatever I've mentioned, Prabhu. If I missed out anything, I have also familiarized myself only recently with this fully. Actually, I was also struggling with it initially. So I'm sure a lot of the other devotees on the call might also have some questions. So we'll take a few questions before we move to the rest of the chapter, Prabhu. And if I have missed out anything, please correct me.
No, Prabhuji, I'm not in a position to correct, but Prabhuji, this is wonderful, actually, to really see the complete hierarchy. I have one question, Prabhuji, before we go. Prabhuji, if you scroll down.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, in this Vaibhava Vilasa in the Vaikuntha, Keshava, Narayana, Madhava, Prabhuji, are there any functionalities of these avatars, or like they're just names? Like, do we know? Vasudeva, Mahasankrishna, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. I know we do that while doing Achamanam.
Yes, Prabhu.
But in any reason or purpose of these avatars?
Yeah, partially potent manifestations is only that's what I learned, Prabhu. But what is the specific function of each of these expansions, Prabhu? That was not covered in that lecture, Prabhu. Okay. So I also don't have an answer, but this is something that even I am very curious. In fact, above the Swamsha expansion, yeah, I think there is still a lot for us to learn as well, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. Some other Prabhu was replying, Prabhu. Anybody else had some other thoughts, answers? Hello?
Prabhuji, I think it's some noise. I muted.
Okay, Prabhu. So yes, Prabhu, this is it's actually homework for me also. And now a lot of curiosity is there to understand more above the Swamsha.
Yes.
Also, why two Chaturvyuhas? Actually, one question that I had in mind also, why the two Chaturvyuhas? That you have the fully potent Adi Chaturvyuha and then the Dvitiya Chaturvyuha expansions that are there. And in between you have Narayana.
Yes, yes. Yes, Ram Reddy Prabhu, you have a question?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I have one request and one question, Prabhu. Is it possible to share this PDF, Prabhu, in the group?
Yes, Prabhu, I will share it. Prabhu.
That is one. And my question, Prabhu, from Adi Chaturvyuha, the Narayana is like Narayana comes from Chaturvyuha or like only Mula Sankarshana, Prabhu?
So Narayana is coming from the 4 according to this chart. Prabhu.
Okay.
This is my understanding over here.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
And this chart they are using in the Bhaktivedanta Veda Vidyapit Prabhu. So I'm assuming that this has already been vetted fully.
And this is all from the same chapter, Prabhu, same thing, right? It's
Yes, Prabhu. So
chart made out
in
of
his,
from the
in his
text.
video, if you look at the YouTube video, Gauranga Darshan Prabhu deals with this chart after finishing the 28th verse.
Okay.
In 27th verse, when he finishes the incarnations and before proceeding to the 28th verse, he deals with this Prabhu.
Okay. Maybe you can ask him, Prabhuji, on like more details about this.
I will do that, Prabhu. I will ask him this question. Any other questions, Prabhujis and Matajis? If not, I will move to the next section, sir, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Just one minute. Let me just change my screen.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji.
Dandavat Pranam Mataji.
Prabhuji, I mean, even I don't know the answer, but they're all related to Krishna, isn't it, Prabhuji? Like Pradyumna is son of Krishna and Aniruddha is grandson of Krishna. That's what they used to say, isn't it, Prabhuji?
So, in which expansion, Mataji? That is the key question. No, so is this in the Swamsha expansions or earlier expansions, Mataji? And so I don't have an answer for that, Mataji. And this is where above the Swamsha expansions, even I am a bit lost because I have so many that much learning over here, Mataji. As Praveen Prabhu said, I'm going to also be asking this question. Maybe what we can do is, Mataji, and we can maybe collect the questions and I'll send it to Gauranga Darshan Prabhu.
Okay, Prabhuji.
I can do that, Mataji. I will request you. I will also note this question and I will take these questions to Gauranga Darshan Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Reshare my screen. Just 1 minute. Can you see my screen, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can see.
So in verse 26, we did see that, he said, that verse says, "O Brahmanas, the incarnations of the Lord are innumerable, like rivulets flowing from inexhaustible sources of water." So again, this is also trying to confirm that what the number of expansions of and the incarnations of the Lord are beyond our comprehension, and they're just unlimited incarnations like many rivulets of water. And Lilananda Prabhu yesterday used a very nice example of the bubbles in a river. It's impossible for us to calculate it, but Krishna knows exactly the number of bubbles. And all the rishis, manus, demigods, and descendants of Manu, who are especially powerful, are plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. This includes also the Prajapatis. So all these expansions are coming from Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, as we saw in that chart just now. And then we concluded this section, the first section of this chapter, with this Paribhasha Sutra of Srimad Bhagavatam, wherein we said all of the above mentioned incarnations, please note, all of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions. So as we had seen here in the chart, you have plenary portions of the Lord Krishna, and then you have plenary portions of the plenary portions of Lord Krishna. So he is the original personality of Godhead. And all of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists. And the Lord incarnates to protect the theists. And I also spent some time to just explain that verse also, which is here the importance, the emphasis on tu Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. But Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. We'll now move to the, we read the purport also, which was a fairly lengthy purport, and now move to verse number 29. So, any Mataji or devotee want to read the translation, please?
Shall I, Prabhuji?
Yes, yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
The translation. Whoever carefully recites the mysterious appearances of the Lord with devotion in the morning and in the evening gets relief from all miseries of life.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
So, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. So again, this is kind of, summarizing all the first 28 verses of that we just read up to now, which is essentially that recitation gives relief from memories. Recite the Srimad Bhagavatam, recite the chapters from the Srimad Bhagavatam will give us ultimate relief. So we'll move to the next verse. Now here we are dealing with the material forms of the Lord and the Jiva. So this is below the Brahmajyoti level that we spoke of. And here specifically focuses there on the Virat Rupa. So we had touched upon this also earlier, that the Virat Rupa of the Lord is imaginary. And here this is getting confirmed again here also in this verse. It was touched upon in the earlier verses also in Prabhupada's purports, but here it is getting covered. Any devotee, Mataji's, Prabhuji's, please, if you can read the text number 30.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, I'll read it, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Text 30. The conception of Virat universal form of the Lord as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of Lord's having a form. But factually, the Lord has no material form. Virat Rupa is Lord's material form manifested by his external energy. He has a spiritual form in the spiritual world manifested by his internal potency.
So the translation is one which is not in bold, but the bold I just put in some key points there, Prabhuji. So, but I think the key thing is that actually he has no material form doesn't mean that he does not have any form. He has a spiritual form in the spiritual world, which is manifested by his internal potency. So that is the key important thing. And I don't know about other devotees, but like, for example, when I was growing up and, we used to see Mahabharat, the television serial used to come. We are all waiting for that, the Vishwarup Darshan, the Virat Rup Darshan. And because at that point of time, our comprehension was that that is the ultimate for the Lord. But it's very clearly stated in this verse that this is not the ultimate. This is still imaginary. It is not real. It is not a permanent form of the Lord. The permanent form of the Lord is a Swayam Rupa form of the Lord that we saw in that chart. And that is in Goloka Vrindavana. And that is where we want to go back to. Going back to Godhead. So, important thing is that the form of the living entity is also imaginary. I think this is what we need to keep in mind. Our forms are also temporary. We transmigrate from one gross body to another gross body. But our forms are also temporary. And what we need to keep in mind is the universal form is different from the universe. The universal form is different from the Purushavatara who's creating the universe. The universe is gross, all mountains, trees, etc. And we imagine the universal form because of our blunt material senses. So our first step, in fact, Prabhupada in his purport also he mentioned that for the neophytes, this is the first step to get closer to the Lord. I just read some sections from the purport of Prabhupada. In the Virat Rupa, the material manifestations of different planets have been conceived as his legs, hands, etc. Actually, all such descriptions are for the neophytes. The neophytes cannot conceive of anything beyond matter. So I am also one such neophyte who is struggling to conceive beyond matter. The neophytes cannot conceive of anything beyond matter. The material conception of the Lord is not counted in the list of his factual forms. So again, just once again to summarize over here, the Virat Rupa is the Lord's material form manifested by his external energy. It is not his internal potency. It is external potency with which he is manifesting this particular form. But he has a spiritual form. He has no material form. He has a spiritual form. Please keep that in mind. We move to the next verse. I'll request one of the Prabhujis or Matajis to please read the text. You can also read the bold one, which is just a summary, some points that I have summarized.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I'll read Prabhu. Text 31. Clouds and dust are carried by the air, but less intelligent person says that the sky is cloudy and the air is dirty. Similarly, they also implant material bodies' conceptions on the spirit self.
Yes.
Unintelligent people impose material conceptions on the spirit. They don't acknowledge the spiritual form of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. And I think, we are also very familiar with this because just speaks about our intelligence, our lack of intelligence, and in terms, and I'm sure you all will be able to correlate that we impose our own perceptions on others, right? It might be a fallacy. They say that's why, in leadership and in management, they say that's a fallacy within us when we find a fault in others. That fault exists in you. That's why you're seeing a fault in that other person. And similarly, we unintelligent people are imposing these material conceptions on the Lord. And so they don't acknowledge the spiritual form of the Lord. Prabhupada, in his purport, I'm just reading out specific sections over there. He says, it is further confirmed herein that with our material eyes and senses, we cannot see the Lord. We cannot even detect the spiritual spark which exists within the material body of the living being. In the Nectar of Devotion, again, yesterday I mentioned that verse, and wherein he says, Atha Sri Krishna Namadi na bhavet grayam indriye. So our material senses are so blunt because the Lord's material form, his qualities, his pastimes, his paraphernalias, everything is on a transcendental level. They cannot be perceived by our blunt material senses. And there is only one way, which is to chant the holy name of the Lord, follow the 4 regulative principles, take Krishna Prasadam, and gradually Krishna will show himself to you. You cannot go and see him. You need Lord's mercy. Without the Lord's mercy, he will not appear. And that will only happen through this prescription that has been given by Parampara, coming from Lord Narada, coming down the Parampara, and now we have been given that prescription. So let's follow that prescription. And so Prabhupada says, similarly, those who want to see the Lord with their present material eyes or with the material senses are advised to meditate on the gigantic external feature called the Virat Rupa. So if we want to meditate, and this is especially for the neophytes who are starting off, because it's not easy. Yesterday, one of my colleagues who called me up, Rohit Prabhuji from who's working with me, he's part of, I don't know if he's working today, but he said that to understand the incarnations, the Purushavataras, was at a higher level. It's not easy. I also struggled when I was started off. So he's saying, similarly, Prabhupada is giving a precision, those who want to see the Lord with their material senses, our eyes, are advised to meditate on the gigantic external feature called the Virat Rupa. And that is where we start associating the different parts of the Lord with what we see in this creation, right? From the mountains to the trees, to the sun and the moon, everything. So I'll move to the next verse now. Again, I'll request one Mataji or one Prabhuji to please kindly read the text. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Krishna Shri Krishna.
Hare Krishna, can I read?
Yes, yes, Prabhu. Please go ahead. Vichana, Prabhu.
Text 32. Yeah, 30 to 34 material forms of Lord and the Jiva. Text 32. Beyond this gross conception of form is another subtle conception of form which is without formal shape and is unseen, unheard and unmanifest. The living beings has his form beyond this subtlety. Otherwise, he could not have repeated the births. Subtle forms beyond gross forms.
That is kind of just a summary. I put the subtle form beyond gross forms. Thank you, Vakanjan Das Prabhu. So again here, this is kind of wrapping up this part wherein, we all have a gross body. And I think we are hearing it that the gross body is not. So we are not the body, we are the soul. But beyond this gross body exists a subtle body. That's what we see in this verse. Beyond this gross conception of form is another, which is the subtle conception of form, which is without form, shape, and is unseen. And when what transmigrates from one gross body to another gross body, subtle body and the soul, they keep transmigrating. But the living being has his form beyond this subtlety. Otherwise, he could not have repeated births. If otherwise, we would have ended in this particular gross form. So Prabhupada, in his purport, he gives a conclusion. He says the conclusion is that the Lord is eternally existent in his transcendental form, which is neither gross nor subtle, like that of the living being. So when you're talking about the gross body and the subtle body, please keep in mind this is the material form. Still we are talking about the material form. In the previous verse, we read that the Lord does not have a material form, he has a spiritual form. Here Prabhupada is nicely concluding and saying that the Lord is eternally existent in his transcendental form, which is eternal, which is neither gross nor subtle like that of his living beings. His body is never to be compared to the gross and subtle bodies of the living beings. All such conceptions of God's body are imaginary. And this is where, if you link it back, the Virat Rupa, which is a manifestation of his external energy, is imaginary. The living being has his eternal spiritual form, which is conditioned only by his material contamination. So our soul has a spiritual form, but we are unaware of it. And that's because of the material conditioning that this soul has been subjected to over millions of lives of births and deaths that we have been going through in this gross body. And we have been transmigrating from one body to another body and then to another body again. So again, the living being has his eternal spiritual form, which is conditioned only by his material contamination. Move to text 33 and text 34. We'll combine this, Prabhujis and Matajis. So if any Prabhuji or Mataji can please read this two texts and the summary below.
I can read, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Whenever a person experiences by self-realization, both the gross and subtle bodies have nothing to do with the pure self. At the time, he sees himself as well as the Lord. Text 34. If the illusionary energy subsides and the living entity becomes fully enriched with knowledge by the grace of the Lord, then he becomes at once enlightened with self-realization and thus becomes situated in his own glory. Realizing that the self has nothing to do with the gross and subtle forms, being situated in one's own glory Is there a continuation, Prabhu?
No, Prabhu, that's it. That's it. That's just a kind of, I would actually, I will maybe from the next verse, I will take the one in bold because I've written it. It's a kind of a summary I just put there for myself to cue my discussion. But thanks for reading it, Prabhu. Thanks, Hare Krishna. But again, here, Prabhujis and Matajis, as you're saying, this is again, it's dovetailing it to that next level. So whenever a person experiences by self-realization that both the gross and subtle bodies, the material creation, have nothing to do with the pure self, which has a spiritual form, which is eternal. At that time, he is himself as well as the Lord. So again, there's a clear distinction that we are not the Lord. You see yourself as well as the Lord. If the illusory energy subsides and the living entity becomes fully enriched with knowledge of the absolute truth by the grace of the Lord. Important, you need the mercy of the Lord to have this realization, and without his mercy, you will not have that realization. Then he becomes at once enlightened with self-realization and thus becomes situated in his own glory. And this is what we all should strive for and aspire for as devotees, with one single-minded focus to realize this self, so that we realize our own glory, but are also eternally in the service of the Lord. So in his purport, Srila Prabhupada says, I'm not reading out the full purport, I'm reading out some sections of the purport only. The difference between self-realization and material illusion is to know that the temporary or illusory impositions of the material energy in the shape of gross and subtle bodies are superficial coverings of the self. Superficial coverings of the self. The coverings take place due to ignorance. So all this conditioning that we have been going through is all due to our ignorance. And just imagine the amount of layers of dirt that have accumulated on the mirror, that we are not able to see ourselves, who we are in reality. What is our constitutional position vis-a-vis Lord Shri Krishna? We are not able to see that, and that's because of our own ignorance. Such coverings are never effective in the person of the personality of Godhead. So knowing this convincingly is called liberation or seeing the absolute. This means that perfect self-realization is made possible by adoption of godly or spiritual life. I'll repeat this line. This means that perfect self-realization is made possible by adoption of a godly or spiritual life. Self-realization means becoming indifferent to the needs of the gross and the subtle bodies and becoming serious about the activities of the self. So what we prescribe in our parampara, that follow the 4 regulative principles, follow the austerities, do your chanting. These are all steps so that we become serious about the activities of the self and we become indifferent to the needs of the gross and subtle body. He also says, and by culture of transcendental knowledge, when the living being prays to the Lord for deliverance from the clutches of forgetfulness, the Lord, by his causeless mercy, removes the living being's illusory curtain, and thus he realizes his own self. So we did see when Dhruva Maharaj went to meditate, right, and Narada gave him the culture of the transcendental knowledge came to him. Then the living being prays to the Lord for deliverance from the clutches of forgetfulness. The Lord, by his causeless mercy, I think that is a key word there, by his causeless mercy. Without the Lord's causeless mercy, this illusory curtain cannot be removed. So let's not be in that fool's paradise that by doing some kind of yoga or some other following something else, we will be able to lift this curtain. We have seen that even the most famous rishis, though they practiced penance for years, thousands of years, one single incident and they fell down. So there are so many instances that are there in our history. We have seen that. They were great sages. They were great ascetics, great yogis. But their goal was not Goloka Vrindavan. Their goal was to be themselves as absolute. And they started abstaining. They followed all that. but then the blink of an eye, they had to fall down. So without, again, I'm just repeating this because this is extremely important. It is his causeless mercy that will remove this illusory curtain. Only one formula that we have. Am I doing on time? What are other around some time is there? We'll read now this text 35 and text 36. Any Prabhuji or Mataji, please, Mataji or Prabhuji, please read it. I'll cover the bold section, Mataji, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
I will continue, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu, please continue. Thank you, Prabhu.
Please there, I will continue. Yeah. Text 35. The learned men describe. One second. Not able to see.
You're not able to see, Prabhu?
No, it's my this thing. 1 second. Yeah, sorry. Text 35. 35 to 39 is about describing and understanding the Lord. Text 35. The learned men describes the birth and activities of unborn and inactive, which is undiscoverable even in the Vedic scriptures. He is the Lord of the heart. Text 36. The Lord, whose activities are always spotless, is the master of 6 senses and fully omnipotent with 6 opulences. He creates the manifested universes, maintains them and annihilates them without being in the least affected. He is within every living being and is always independent. Rejecting the material forms, gross and subtle, learned men describes the Lord who has glorious qualities. Learned men focus on the confidential aspects. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. So we see, what not to do, but also what to do over here. And as we see, learned men describe the births and activities of the unborn and inactive, which is undiscoverable even in the Vedic literatures. He is the Lord of the heart. The Lord, whose activities are always spotless, is the master of the 6 senses and is fully omnipotent with 6 opulences. So Krishna is fully omnipotent with 6 opulences. He creates the manifested universes, all the universes. He is creating them and he also annihilates them without being the least affected. So he is beyond the material creations. So in his purport, Srila Prabhupada says, because the Lord is the absolute transcendence, all his forms, names, pastimes, attributes, associates, his energies are identical with him. That is, they are all on a transcendental level. His transcendental energy acts according to his omnipotency. The same energy acts as his external, internal, and marginal energies. And by his omnipotencies, he can perform anything and everything through the agency of anything, any of the above energies. So he can do anything he wishes. He is Lord, after all. He is God. He is Bhagwan. So, and then Prabhupada goes on to say, he uses a nice analogy of the expert electrician. So he says, the example of the electrical energy is very appropriate in this connection. The expert electrician can utilize the electrical energy for both heating and cooling by adjustment only. So it is the same energy. He can either use it as his internal energy, he can use it as external energy or marginal energy. Same thing. So electrical energy is using here as an example. He says the expert electrician can utilize electrical energy for both heating and cooling by adjustment only. Similarly, the external energy, which now bewilders the living being into continuation of birth and death, is turned into internal potency by the will of the Lord to lead the living being to eternal life. So when a living being is thus graced by the Lord, he is placed in his proper constitutional position to enjoy eternal spiritual life. And then in text 36, the purport to text 36, he says, both the Lord and the living entities are essentially all spiritual. Therefore, both of them are eternal and neither of them has birth and death. The living beings who take birth and then accept death are bound by the laws of material nature. So our conditioning is binding us. We have made this choice to be bound by these ropes of material nature. But the so-called appearance and disappearance of the Lord are not actions of material nature, but are demonstrations of the internal potency of the Lord. As we read, the Lord with his potencies, after all, when he has created everything, he can do anything he wants with his potency. So let's not mistake that his appearance and disappearance are the actions of material nature. This has already been confirmed in the earlier verse also. He is beyond. So, but are demonstration of the internal potency of the Lord. And then Prabhupada also says, as a matter of fact, the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his different activities are all confidential, even to the Vedic literatures. Yet they are displayed by the Lord to bestow mercy upon the conditioned souls. We should always take advantage of the narrations of the activities of the Lord, which are meditations on Brahman, in the most convenient and palatable form. So here, Prabhupada is saying that these activities of the Lord that we hear, we see, are made convenient and palatable form for us, to help us to progress in devotional service and to go back to Godhead. Go to text number 37 now. Prabhuji and Mataji, if you can read the text.
Hare Krishna, I'll read, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please.
The foolish with the poor fund of knowledge cannot know the transcendental nature of the forms, names, and activities of the Lord, who is playing like an actor in a drama. Nor they can express such things, neither in the speculations nor in their works.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So yes, only the fools consider the Lord's spiritual pastimes as ordinary. Again, it's been coming back again, into how foolish people who are having the lack of understanding mentally speculate, and then they make a concoction of things in their heads, right, and consider his spiritual pastimes as ordinary. So we have seen that, and I was listening to Radhanath Swami Maharaj's lecture, one of his lectures on Ramayana, and I think in one of the verses yesterday also the purports Prabhupada talks about the weightlessness of the rocks, right? So we call this all mythology, right? Lot of, not we, but I'm using the word we, but people refer to these great scriptures also as Hindu mythology. And it's interesting, and Radhanath Swami Maharaj says, if this is mythology, why hasn't anyone so far in this non-mythological world been able to create such a work of literature, right? If this is mythology, why hasn't anyone been able to do it, right? And then if you look at Prabhupada's purport from yesterday also, says that, God doesn't need to prove this to anybody, but he is doing this so that his activities can be glorified. But again, there, with our material blunt senses, we are not able to appreciate these activities of the Lord. So when the Lord makes the stone float on water, the easiest thing to say is that that's mythology, rather than understanding that he is the creator. He can do anything he wants. So Prabhupada in his purport, he says, the fruitive workers have practically no information of the absolute truth. The fruitive worker has practically no information of absolute truth, and the mental speculators, after being frustrated in fruitive activities, turn their faces towards the absolute truth and try to know him by mental speculation. So they are one level up. And for all these men, the absolute truth is a mystery, as the jugglery of the magician is a mystery to the children. So we know that what the magician is really creating out there, right, he's doing it is a trick, but it's still a mystery to the children, right? Being deceived by the jugglery of the Supreme Being, the non-devotees, who may be very dexterous in fruitive work and mental speculation, are always in ignorance with such limited knowledge. They are unable to penetrate into the mysterious region of transcendence. The mental speculators are a little more progressive than the gross materialists. That's what he said, one level up. Or the fruitive workers, but because they are within the grip of illusion, so still they are within this grip of Maya, which is so strong, they take it for granted that anything which has form, a name, and activities is but a product of material energy. So they come to a conclusion based on that mental speculation. For them, the Supreme Spirit is formless, nameless, and inactive. And because such mental speculators equalize the transcendental name and form of the Lord with mundane names and forms, they are in fact in ignorance. With such a poor fund of knowledge, there is no access to the real nature of the Supreme Being. Hare Krishna. So I have read out the key parts of this purport. So we'll move to text number 39. Another 5 more verses to go, and then after that we can open up for questions. Hare Krishna. Anyone can read?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Yes, Mataji. Please go ahead.
1 minute. Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. For such inquiries, invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all the universes, and guarantee 100% immunity from the dreadful reputation of birth and death. Suda Goswami appreciates the sages' fortune because they have made such wonderful inquiries about Vasudeva.
Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. So here, we are seeing here, and now we are coming to the conclusion of this chapter. And here Suda Goswami is appreciating the sages' fortune because they have made such wonderful inquiries about Vasudeva. The 6 questions that they have asked, he's like saying it's not just enough to do this thing, but even making these inquiries, you are fortunate about the Lord. When you even just start, so even that first step, when you make these inquiries about the Lord, there itself you are getting the God's causeless mercy. Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. For such inquiries invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all the universes and guarantees 100% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. Unfortunately, Prabhujis and Matajis, in today's material world in Kali Yuga, we are making inquiries definitely. Everyone is asking a question. And I think somewhere, I remember Gauranga Darshan Prabhu has used this analogy of, he's shared what Prabhupada has shared, wherein he says, everyone is asking questions. Even the birds are asking questions at night when they go back to their nest. You can hear so much commotion and noise when the birds actually come back. You see that, right? If you have a place where a lot of birds and trees are there, in the night at sunset, you'll hear a huge noise. That is, even the birds are asking questions, right? We are also asking questions. We are making inquiries, but we are making inquiries only about eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But when you make the right inquiries, like the sages have done here, then you invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of God. So Prabhujis and Matajis, this is verse actually here, we are getting some instruction in terms of how we need to orient ourselves. What kind of inquiries we need to make to progress in spiritual life and make this journey back to Godhead faster. In his purport, you can read the purport, it's a short purport only. So I will read it very quickly. The inquiries of the sages headed by Shaunaka are herewith praised by Suta Goswami on the merit of their transcendental nature. As already concluded, only the devotees of the Lord can know him to a considerable extent, and no one else can know him at all. So the devotees are perfectly cognizant of all spiritual knowledge. The personality of Godhead is the last word in absolute truth. Impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma are included in the knowledge of the personality of Godhead. So we have also read this in the Bhagavad Gita when we have been reading the Bhagavad Gita, that realizing personality of Godhead, you have covered everything else. So one who knows the personality of Godhead can automatically know all about him, his multipotencies and his expansions, So the devotees are congratulated as being all successful. A sent person devotee of the Lord is immune to the dreadful material misery of repeated birth and death. So our goal should be to know Krishna and Goloka Vrindavan. Once you realize Krishna and Goloka Vrindavan, you will realize all the hierarchy of expansions, all the 6 avatars in the Swamsha expansions. We'll realize everything. So let's make it that goal that we need to realize Krishna. Next verse, please. Anyone can read this, please. And now moving to text number 40.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. May I read?
Yes, Mataji. Yes, Mataji. Please read.
Text 40. The Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God and is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. You want me to read the boldness?
I will cover that, Mataji. Thank you. So, Prabhuji and Matajis, what a beautiful verse. It is meant for the ultimate good for all people. And it is successful and all blissful and all perfect. It's the Amala Purana. So we are now coming to the 6th question of the rishis, the sages, which is, where did religion take shelter after Krishna's disappearance? Which was asked in 1.1.23. So Srimad Bhagavatam is emphasized here to be an incarnation of God. See that Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God. If one carefully and patiently studies Srimad Bhagavatam, so Prabhupada mentions this in his purport. I will allow you to read the purport. Please take the time to read these purports from 40 to 44. Very important purports on the glories of the Srimad Bhagavatam. If one carefully and patiently studies Srimad Bhagavatam, one can derive the blessings of the Lord. And as we read in the earlier verse, just by making simple inquiries, we'll be deriving the blessings of the Lord. The Lord loves to be captured in the hearts of the readers. Please keep this in mind, Prabhujis and Matajis. The Lord loves to be captured in the hearts of the reader. This is what he's waiting for. That please capture me in your hearts. Capture me. And Srimad Bhagavatam has to be learned from a spiritual master. This is all the Prabhupada says. That is very, very important, that if one wants to understand, you need to understand this, listen here and get this knowledge from a spiritual master. As this has been passed down in that disciplic succession. That's where the disciplic succession is so important. And finally, please keep this in mind, that the Srimad Bhagavatam can also reciprocate. It can reciprocate as the Lord in person. So for us in Kali Yuga, we are very, very fortunate that we have this great scripture, and by the mercy of the Lord and from our founding Acharya Srila Prabhupada, we have got this translation to help us understand this great scripture. And with the help of all the senior devotees at ISKCON, we are able to even understand and develop and build this understanding further, so that Srimad Bhagavatam can reciprocate as the Lord in person. So do not underestimate the power of this great work, of this great scripture. This scripture is Lord himself. It's the literary incarnation of the Lord and can reciprocate as the Lord in person. So even though Krishna has disappeared to carry on another pastime in another universe from here, religion takes shelter under this one scripture. So hope is not lost for us, and we need to keep our hope alive, because we still have Krishna with us in the form of this literary incarnation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Just see the purport if there is anything else that is. I would encourage you to also read this purport, Mataji and Prabhujis. It's a very, very nice purport. It's not a very big purport. You can read it. So I'm just reading one part. It says, Lord Sri Chaitanya Prabhu declared that Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless sound representation of all Vedic knowledge and history. So don't go running behind every reading, every Veda, every other scripture, everything else. The essence of the essence of the essence is captured here. So you don't need to go and find ingredients. This is the final recipe that is coming, the final that coming to your table. As imagine this as, this is coming for you. This is the final thing. All the ingredients are there in it. And we need to maximize this. He says Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of Lord Shri Krishna and therefore is non-different from him. Srimad Bhagavatam should be worshipped as respectfully as we worship the Lord. And here again, Lilananda Prabhu keeps emphasizing that before we start the class, what we should do. We should pray. And what we should not do also during the class. And that is because Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of the God, Lord. And thereby we can derive the ultimate blessing of the Lord through its careful and patient study. Important thing, careful and patient study. Remember, as God is all light, all bliss, and all perfection, so also is Srimad Bhagavatam. We can have this transcendental light of the Supreme Brahman, Sri Krishna, from the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, provided it is received through the medium, as I said, through the medium of the transparent spiritual master. Lord Chaitanya's private secretary, Srila Swarupa Damodar Goswami, advised all intending visitors who came to see the Lord at Puri to make a study of the Bhagavatam from the person Bhagavatam. Person Bhagavatam is a self-realized, bona fide spiritual master. So that is why it's important to receive this knowledge from the person Bhagavatam, the spiritual master. And through him only one can understand the lessons of Bhagavatam in order to receive the desired result. One can derive from the study of Bhagavatam all benefits that are possible to be derived from the personal presence of the Lord. It carries with it all the transcendental blessings of the Lord Sri Krishna that we can expect him from personal contact. So let's not miss this opportunity. After listening to this and hearing this and reading this, I'm sure there's enough motivation for all of us to complete reading page to page, end to end, every single word with a pure heart of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam literature. Text number 41. Mataji, Prabhuji, anyone can read the translation?
Yes, Prabhu, I can read. Hare Krishna. Text 41. Sri Vyasadeva delivered to his son, who is the most respected among the self-realized, after extracting the cream of all Vedic literatures and histories of the universe. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. So we are aware of how this knowledge has been transferred. So Srila Vyasadeva delivered to his son, who is the most respected amongst the self-realized, right? So even the person who's received this is the most respected amongst the self-realized. Amongst the self-realized, he is the most respected. And so Srila Vyasadeva delivered to his son. So amongst the self-realized, amongst the cream, he is the cream. And after extracting the cream of all Vedic literatures and histories of the universe. So he says the cream of all scriptures. So in the verse, if you see, Tat idam grahayam asa sutam atmavatavam varam sarva vedita asanam saram samudritam. So saram is the essence of essence. Saram is the essence of essence. This is the cream of all scriptures. And as I just mentioned earlier, this is the essence of the essence of the essence. There's the Vedanta Sutras, which is the compilation of the essence of the Vedas. Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of the Vedanta Sutras. So let us treasure this. And Prabhupada in his purport says, men with a poor fund of knowledge only accept the history of the world from the time of Buddha or since 600 BC. And prior to this period, all histories mentioned in the scriptures are calculated by them to be only imaginary stories. It's a kind of a warning that, what we should not do and what we should avoid. That is not a fact. All the stories mentioned in the Puranas and Mahabharata, etc., are actual histories, not only of this planet, but also of millions of other planets within the universe. Sometimes the history of planets beyond the world appears to such men to be unbelievable, but they do not know that different planets are not equal in all respects, and that therefore some of the historical facts derived from the other planets do not correspond with the experience of this planet. So long purport, and I will request all of you, please, as I said, 40 to 44, please read page to page, end to end. Not only this, the entire book you should read page to page. This chapter is extremely important. I'll move to the text number 42. Text number 42. Please, any Mataji Prabhuji, please read the translation, please.
Shall I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Text 42. Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn delivered the Bhagavatam to the great emperor Parikshit Maharaj, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganges, awaiting death without taking food or drink. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you. So, as we see, Sukadeva Goswami gave this transcendental knowledge to Parikshit Maharaj, and at that time, how much time was there left for Parikshit Maharaj? Right, 7 days. And at the end of the 7 days, when he left his body, he was in absolute pure consciousness. He was not worried what was going to happen to him. Even before that, he was a very evolved soul, definitely. After this transcendental knowledge, he was completely willing to face death in the eye, because he knew what was his ultimate goal, what was his constitutional position, and was fully realized, pure consciousness. So there were no misconceptions at the time of the death that he had. And he was able to focus on the lotus feet of the Lord with a single-minded, attention. There was no deviation at all. Complete focus was there. So Prabhupada in his purport, he says, Emperor Parikshit received the information of his death in time, and he at once left his kingdom and family and sat down on the bank of the Ganges to fast till death. All the great rishis, philosophers, mystics, etc. went there due to his imperial position. They offered many suggestions about his immediate duty. And at last, it was settled that he would hear from Shukadeva Goswami about Lord Krishna. Thus the Bhagavatam was spoken to him. And then he goes on to just 1 minute. Shukadeva Goswami had long ago stated that the same truth, that at the end one must remember Narayana. That is the essence of all spiritual activities. That is the conclusion of everything, is that at the end, at that last moment, when we are going to give up our lives, when we are going to give up this gross body and hopefully not transmigrate into another gross body, we must remember Narayana. That is the essence of all spiritual activities. In pursuance of this eternal truth, Srimad Bhagavatam was heard by Emperor Parikshit, and it was recited by the able Shukadeva Goswami, and both the speaker and the receiver of the messages of Bhagavatam were duly delivered by the same medium. So it's not just the receiver, but the speaker also who was delivered. But more importantly, I think, let's keep in mind, what is that goal? There is only one ultimate truth for us now in this material body, is that we will have to give up this material body one day. Everything else is still conjecture and speculation according. It will happen. It's already been predestined. But that ultimate truth, which we know, which we don't know what else is going to happen between now and the point when we die. The Lord is so empowered that at this very moment when we are speaking also, suddenly we might just switch off and go off. But our consciousness should be such that at that last moment, we are not thinking about our own material desires, what we have not achieved. But remembering the lotus feet of the Lord. And to get there, the prescription has been given by our physician, Srila Prabhupada. He is our physician for us. He has given us this prescription. Follow this prescription, you will be good, you will be hale and hearty to go back to Godhead. he has given that prescription. And sometimes that prescription is a bitter pill to swallow. We are not able to appreciate it. He also uses this analogy of sugarcane juice for jaundice. It's not sweet, but actually it is very, very sweet. But we are not able to appreciate it because we are infected with jaundice. We are completely infected, conditioned souls. We are not able to appreciate it. So let's not do that. Let's trust the doctor, Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, take that prescription with full confidence and trust that what is being prescribed will cure us. This is an important verse. We'll recite this. Let's recite this verse. Krishne swabdhamopagate dharma jnanadibhi sakalau nashta drisham esha puranarko adhunoditaha. Can someone read the translation, please?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Text 43. The Bhagavata Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana.
What an amazing verse. Compared the Bhagavatam to the sun, the rising sun, the brilliance of the sun that will destroy all the darkness in our hearts. So let's embrace this Bhagavatam. So sun like Bhagavatam arose when Krishna departed. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the torchbearer for the blind of Kali Yuga. So the blind person that we are, while we do think that we can see, we know that our material senses cannot perceive and see what needs to be perceived and seen. And for this, we need that assistance. We need somebody to guide us. And here Srimad Bhagavatam is the torchbearer for blind people like me in this Kali Yuga. So I'll quickly read through this purport also. It's an important one, so I will just read this one. Lord Shri Krishna has his eternal Dhama or abode, that is Goloka Vrindavan, where he eternally enjoys himself with his eternal associates and paraphernalia. And his eternal abode is a manifestation of his internal energy, whereas the material world is a manifestation of his external energy. When he descends to the material world, he displays himself with all paraphernalia in his internal potency, which is called Atma Maya. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he descends by his own potency, Atma Maya. His name, fame, form, paraphernalia, abode, etc. are not therefore creations of matter. He descends to reclaim the fallen souls. That is the purpose. And to reestablish codes of religion which are directly enacted by him. Dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Except for God, no one can establish the principles of religion. So let's not be mistaken, friends, devotees, brothers, because other people outside claim this, that they are doing something. Except, let's keep in mind, except for God, no one can establish these principles of religion. Either he or a suitable person empowered by him can dictate the codes of religion. Real religion means to know God, our relationship with him, and our duties in relationship with him, and to know ultimately our destination after leaving this material body. The conditioned souls who are entrapped by the material energy hardly know all these principles of life. Most of them are like animals engaged in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. They are mostly engaged in sense enjoyment under the pretension of religiosity, knowledge, or salvation. They are still more blind in the present age of quarrel or Kali Yuga. In the Kali Yuga, the population is just a royal addition of the animals. They have nothing to do with spiritual knowledge or godly religious life. They are so blind that they cannot see anything beyond the justification of the subtle mind, not only the gross body, the subtle mind, intelligence or ego, he says. But they are very much proud of their advancement in knowledge, science, and material prosperity. They can risk their lives to become a dog or a hog just after leaving the present body, or they have completely lost sight of the ultimate aim of life. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared before us just a little prior to the beginning of Kali Yuga, and he returned to his eternal home practically at the commencement of Kali Yuga. While he was present, he exhibited everything by his different activities. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita specifically and eradicated all pretentious principles of religiosity. And prior to his departure from this material world, he empowered Sri Vyasadeva through Narada to compile the messages of Srimad Bhagavatam, and thus both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam are like the torchbearers for the blind people of this age. In other words, if men in this age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only. There are many other books, please don't waste your time. And their aim of life will be fulfilled. Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of the Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum of life. Summum bonum, ultimate purpose for our life, which is Lord Sri Krishna personified. We must therefore accept Srimad Bhagavatam as the direct representation of Lord Krishna. One who can see Srimad Bhagavatam can see also Lord Sri Krishna in person. They are identical. Hare Krishna. This is the final verse, and it has a short purport. So please read the text and that summary also. I will cover the bold summary, and then somebody can read the purport. It's just a short purport that is there. And with that, we'll conclude the chapter. Anyone can read.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'll read.
Yes, Prabhu.
Text 44. O learned Brahmanas, when Sukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus, by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I realized.
Hari Bol. So this is what now we are getting from the next chapter onwards. Another Prabhu will also start from chapter 4 onwards. It will get even more and more addictive and exciting. I can promise you that. So as you are saying, one important theme in this is the parampara. So it has to come in the disciplic succession. We read about this earlier also in the purports and in the verses also, that we have to hear it from the bona fide spiritual master whose eyes have been opened up by the causeless mercy of the Lord. So in that parampara, Sukadeva Goswami, it came to Parikshit, but at that time, Suta Goswami was also there, and he took it for him. Then he gave it to the sages. So one can describe Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's remember this very important point. One can describe Srimad Bhagavatam only to the extent Krishna has empowered him. It is his mercy. Without his mercy, nothing. Even that thinking that we have. When he says, I am thought, I am what is in your mind, I am forgetfulness also. So he will make you forget also, if you are not. So that is his mercy. We have that verse, Sarvasya Chaham Ridhi Sannivishtu Mattas Matis Jnanam Apohanam Cha. He is situated in everyone's heart, and by his mercy, remembrance, knowledge, forgetfulness, everything is coming. So it's only with his mercy we can describe Srimad. So I will we'll go to the last purport. Someone can read this purport. It's the last purport, so we should read this also for this chapter, and then we'll conclude the class with some questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, can I read it, please?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu, please.
Text 44 purport. One can certainly see directly the presence of Lord Sri Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam if one has heard it from a self-realized great soul like Sukadeva Goswami. One cannot, however, learn Bhagavatam from a bogus hired reciter whose aim of life is to earn some money out of such recitation and employ the earning in sex indulgence. No one can learn Srimad Bhagavatam who is associated with persons engaged in sex life. That is the secret of learning Bhagavatam. Nor one can learn Bhagavatam from one who interprets the text by his mundane scholarship. One has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Shukadeva Goswami and no one else. If one at all wants to see Lord Sri Krishna in the pages, that is the process and there is no alternative. Suta Goswami is a bona fide representative of Sukadeva Goswami because he wants to present the message which he received from the great learned Brahmana. Sukadeva Goswami presented Bhagavatam as he heard it from his great father, and so also Suta Goswami is presenting Bhagavatam as he heard from Sukadeva Goswami. Simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. The word Nivishtha means that Suta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person, at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Sri Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And so wonderfully put by Srila Prabhupada. Simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. And that is where the austerities we perform become even more important. So that we are able to give this. Even with performing those austerities, we still struggle. I struggle. But let's not give that up, because that is the only way. The prescription will take some time to work. When we go to a doctor and the doctor gives a medicine, I know in today's world, we are all seeking instant relief. But it does take time for the medicine to act. Similarly, this medicine has now been injected. And every time we chant the holy name, that holy name is going inside and it's piercing our heart and it is purifying us. So let's do that, continue that with proper attention and try to bring this juice of Bhagavatam through our ears every Sunday. So with that, I will take a pause and I will just wrap up. So with this last slide that we have, which is, we had the 6 questions of the sages. What is the ultimate good? And that is to develop the love of God through bhakti. What is the essence of all scriptures, which is devotional service? What was the purpose of Krishna's appearance, which is to reclaim people in mode of goodness? What is the purpose of his creation as Purushavataras? This is explained also, which is, and we went through all the incarnations, but again, the primary purpose, he has an important function to reclaim back the people and to establish religion. And then we had discussed the Lilananda also. And finally, we discussed the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the summum bonum, where religion takes shelter after Krishna's disappearance. And this is the literary incarnation of God himself. So with that, we'll take a pause, Praveen Prabhu, and any questions, any feedback also, please do share. I ask for forgiveness if I have omitted something or I missed something or I've said something that is not correct. It's just due to my ignorance. Please forgive me for that, and pray that I am able to continue in my Krishna conscious journeys, Prabhujis and Matajis. Please ask any questions, Prabhuji and Mataji, we'll try to answer it. And I'll request also Praveen Prabhu and other senior devotees who are there, Pinchan Paper who is there, please support me in answering these questions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for a wonderful class. I have a couple of questions, Prabhu. I beg your pardon if I ask something wrong. One question, Prabhu, like, yeah, once Krishna reclaims the souls, and in the next kalpa, or like once he annihilates everything, and then this yuga again starts, right, Prabhu? do these, like whoever the souls that are reclaimed by Krishna, do they come back? Or they don't once we
So
go
the
to
thing is
Goloka?
that if you are reclaimed, is it, have you gone back to Goloka Vrindavan? If you go to Goloka Vrindavan,
Yes, Prabhu.
then you are there. But still, he has given you that free will. And this is what I heard in Radhanath Swami Maharaj's lecture. I hope I'm remembering it correctly, is that, that free will is still there. So at one point of time, we were there in our spiritual forms and we fell down. But now when the annihilation has happened, and if we have not exhausted our material desires, and if we are still connected to these material desires, right? If we have still not learned what is our own constitutional position, and we don't want to go back to Godhead, then we'll definitely will come back again. Praveen Prabhu, anything to add? Please add, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji, you're right, Prabhuji. So absolutely. So Ramdev Prabhu, so basically two things. One, if the spirit soul, if the living Jiva has not exhausted his karma, and and then there is an inhalation, he will be suspended in Mahat Tattva. And then again when the creation starts, all the Jivas will be given the body based on the karma balance. But we have exhausted all the karma balance, and then we sincerely follow devotional service, we all go back to Goloka Vrindavan. And will we come back again? Depends on how we behave there. So Prabhupada explains, don't worry about that part, but worry about how to go back, is what most of the times Prabhupada and other senior acharyas tell us.
Thank you, Prabhu. Shall I ask? I have a few more questions, Prabhu. Is it okay to answer?
Yes, Prabhu, please go ahead.
Prabhu, Mahat Tattva is like a combination of those 24 elements Prabhu you mentioned. And somewhere also we used Jiva and Jiva Tattva together, Prabhu. So Jiva Tattva is all Jivas is called Jiva Tattva, or it includes anything else, Prabhu, when we say Jiva Tattva?
Yes, Prabhu. So the Jiva Tattva is up to the 78% of the qualities, Prabhu. So up to Brahma, that is Jiva Tattva. So Jiva Tattva, 78% of the qualities of Krishna are maximum that we can go is 78%, Prabhu, as Jiva Tattvas. 84% is Lord Shiva. Vishnu is 93%, and then Krishna is 100% of the 64 characteristics that are there.
So then is individual Jiva also will have that 78% of quality?
We can. So
Okay.
we are capable. So, but we have not realized that potential of ourselves to get to that. We are some tiny nanoparticle of that 78% at the moment. At least I am. But we can go there, and that is what we should aspire for, to get to that 78%. But we are not making an effort, or our effort is inadequate. We can go there. So that is what we have read in that verse also, that when the appropriate Jiva Tattva is not there to take the position of Brahma or even that of the demigods, then the Lord himself takes and occupies those positions, and we saw that in the Yajna expansion of the Lord, Yajna Avtara.
Yes, Prabhu. So this sloka in Bhagavad Gita says, Mamaivamsho Jiva Bhuto Jiva Loka Sanatana. So basically it says we're all eternal fragments of Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means we are qualitatively, we have similar qualities of the Lord, but not 100%. Like we also have a minute independence. We also are looking for happiness. So those kind of things. So Jiva is the living soul. Jiva Tattva is all the qualities of the Jiva. Mahat Tattva is different, Prabhuji. Mahat Tattva is a little different than Jiva Tattva. It's just a stock matter. Mahat Tattva is the stock matter where everything is suspended before the new creation starts.
Thank you, Prabhu. One last question, Prabhu. This is where I'm not sure, Prabhu, I'm asking correct question. As we know, Prabhu, like Prabhupada uses like wonderful words, like in his translations and generally. When we was talking about Vishwarupa or Virat Rupa, Prabhu, that imaginary, I'm still not able to understand, Prabhu, because as part of the explanation, I'm not sure whether you mentioned or you heard from Guru Prabhu, imaginary means we have to understand temporary. So then, like, why Prabhupada use that imaginary, Prabhu? As far as I understand, imaginary means it's not real. But Virat Rupa in material sense, it's real, right, Prabhu? But then why it is called imaginary? Yeah.
Because it is not permanent, Prabhu.
Okay.
Because it is not permanent. Anything that is not permanent is imaginary. So even our gross bodies, our subtle bodies are also in that particular yam. So up to that Brahmajyoti level that we saw in that hierarchy of expansion, Prabhu, we will be in an imaginary position only. So our soul is there, Atma, that is permanent, Prabhu, that is eternal. But we have forgotten that it is eternal, we have forgotten its eternal qualities because of our material conditioning. And since we are so connected to this material body, to these material senses, and as Prabhupada says in his word, for that neophyte, this is the easiest way to start, is to start with the Virat Rupa, form of the Lord. Because you are able to connect it to all things that are not permanent. All the material creations that are there around us that are not permanent, they are real. They're not permanent. And that's why they are called imaginary.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Sorry, I took more time for my questions. Thank you.
Ramreddy Prabhu, there is one complete chapter dedicated to Virat Rupa in Bhagavad Gita, and it is very clearly explained there. I'll send the reference to you. Maybe Anandram Prabhu can also send the reference. But as Anandram Prabhu said, it is temporary, not like other incarnations, and it is only shown to show the greatness of the Lord to less intelligent people, because a lot of people cannot imagine Krishna being Virat, means like, who is like the cause of all causes and the source of everything. By looking at the two-handed form, they just cannot imagine that he is he is the cause of all causes. So to show that to Arjuna, and also to show that he is the one, he gives that form 2 times, like two or three times in Mahabharata, and once in Bhagavad Gita, and once in the Purushavataras. But that is only to show people who are less intelligent but it is temporary. It's not permanent. It is just for the understanding and comprehension of other people who really cannot understand Krishna in two-handed form.
And there also, Prabhuji is giving the Divya Chakshu so that you can see even that form.
Correct.
And without that Divya Chakshu, you are not able to see even that. And that is where he's also making it more convenient for us and telling us that, mountains or sun and moon and all, so that when we are seeing all these material creations, we are at least remembering him. And for net, Prabhu, long story short, is that you need his causeless mercy. Without his mercy, you will not be able to see him. He will reveal himself to you. And for that, the prescription is being given by our founding Acharya. Let's follow that prescription. And let's hope that in this lifetime, we make some progress.
Thank you. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So if there are no more questions, Prabhuji, we can close the call. I know it's all devotees must be having also services. So we are almost on time, little bit late, Prabhu, but I think we're kind of on time, better than yesterday.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful lecture with all the explanation details.
So Akinchan Prabhu is asking.
Akinchan, sorry, Prabhuji. Go ahead, Prabhu. Akinchan.
No, Prabhuji. I just thanking you for your wonderful presentation and lecture. Very nice. Nicely presented, and you have been answering nicely. Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for a wonderful lecture. And the today's slides show, the starting slide is very, very nice. You could show us that and then made us more comprehend more well. Thank you for the preparation, Prabhuji. I know it would be a lot of effort on your side and really going us through the chapter 3, which is very important chapter. Hare Krishna. Dandapranam.
Thank you, Prabhu. Please pray for me, Prabhu. Thank you, Mataji's Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very nice session. Thank you.
वांछाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यो च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.